Legislative Committee. This evening, we have a special meeting, and the members of the council we have present. Councilman William Godwin, President of the Gary Common Council. Councilwoman Ty Atkins, Vice President of the Gary Common Council. Councilman at Large Mike Brown. Councilman at Large Ron Brewer. Councilman at Large Glorious Lake. Councilwoman of the 3rd District, Mary Brown. Councilman of the 6th District, Dwight Williams. Councilman of the 6th District and Councilman of the 2nd District, Cozy Weatherspoon. We have our legal advisor, I'm terribly sorry. We have our legal advisor, Attorney Renza Williams, and our financial advisor, William Outler. Good evening. So at this time, see, the subject of our meeting is the City of Gary vehicles. I'm looking and I believe I see everyone that was invited present. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to President William Godwin.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell, and thank you to all members of the council who are present, as well as the requested parties who are here. As we indicated, all council members will have an opportunity to ask questions. I believe that all of us at least should have been in receipt of a memorandum that came from Mr. Rodney Pohl, our corporation counsel. I see that he is on the call. I think that it is only fitting that we begin by giving him an opportunity to provide an overview, if you will, of what he has provided to us. And then from there, I know that there will be questions. I have some, and others may as well on the committee and within the council. Mr. Pohl, thank you. So you want to give us an overview of what you sent us?
Yes. So what has been provided to the council were the purchase of 18 vehicles in the year 2020. The request was for the public safety vehicles that were purchased in that year. There were 8 Ford Interceptor Explorers that were purchased. There were 5 F-150s and 5 F-250s. Those were purchased from originally going through Lakeshore Ford, which became Bozak Ford. Those vehicles were allocated to the city starting in, I think the negotiations began, I think, in April of 2020. And ultimately there were some issues with financing. They had to find financing for those vehicles. The deals of those vehicles closed in November of 2020. Those vehicles, were the way that these purchases came about were at the time when they were looking for police vehicles. Obviously, I don't think it's any secret that there were a massive shortage of vehicles. We as a police department are very low on our numbers, and even despite the fact that we're low on our numbers, we had 2 and 3 officers riding in vehicles at times. So we obviously needed vehicles pretty badly. At the time, this was also during the beginning of the COVID pandemic. There was a shutdown at one of the plants. And even before then, there was apparently a long delay with obtaining vehicles by a number of municipalities. I know that there was an article in the Detroit Free Press that had highlighted the problems with the Chicago Ford Motor Plant, whereby you had municipalities that were waiting a very long time to acquire these vehicles. So given those circumstances, the city had opted to purchase vehicles that were owned by, or I should say, being sold by Lakeshore Ford at the time. The financing for those vehicles was handled through Republic First National. That was obtained after the city had some hard time getting financing for those vehicles. In addition to that, the vehicles were equipped with lights and radios by Bartronics, which is a local group that outfits police vehicles. So the financing covered all of those items, and ultimately, as it stated before, those deals closed in November of 2020. Were there any questions?
So I'll thank you, Mr. Cole. I thought you had a pregnant pause.
No. You have to excuse me too. I will engage in a couple of coughing and sneezing fits. My allergies have been acting up pretty good today. So
I certainly hope you feel better. Let me start, if I may, by just getting a little clarity. So you said there were 8 Ford Explorer Interceptors purchased, 5 F-150s and 5 F-250s. So the police department is in possession of the 8 Ford Explorers and the 5 F-150s. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the 5 F-250s have been sent to General Services.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. One of the questions we had in our last meeting regarding this issue was the extent to which procedures had changed from prior practice to the most recent ordering, specifically related to Commanders Titus and Colbert's role historically and currently in the ordering of police vehicles. And so I'd like to know on the record and in fact, what their roles were as it relates to these 13 vehicles.
I know that I could speak to a little. I know both Sergeant Colbert and Commander Titus are both here, and they can obviously speak for themselves. I do know that Mr. Reeves was the individual that had kind of spearheaded the effort to get these vehicles. I believe he had reached out to Commander Titus and gotten kind of an overview of what they would, what things that they were typically looking for. It's my understanding that Mr. Reeves had taken that information, had given that information to Bartronics, and believed that he had received, or the equipment that they had received was a savings of about $22,000. But again, Commander Titus and Sergeant Colbert, they can obviously speak for themselves, and I, would allow them to do so.
Well, thank you. And let me restate the question, and we'll start with Commander Titus. What was your role in the ordering of these 13 vehicles?
Good evening. I had no role. I had no role in the ordering of the vehicles.
Thank you. Did you provide any specs of what you would like in terms of equipment or vendors for painting or any of that to Mr. Reeves or any other member of the administration?
I did. So Mr. Reeves contacted me via cell phone. Can't really remember when, and asked me about the equipment for the vehicles. So I told him that I had just gotten some quotes because we got some grants, and I had some pricing that I could send him for the typical equipment that we want in the squad cars. So I did send him an email on September 23rd of 2020 at 9:37 a.m.
You said September?
September 23rd, 2020.
Okay. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was that email confirmed receipt from him? Was there any other communication between the two of you via email or on the phone in response to your email?
yes, it was confirmed receipt. I have a receipt on all of my emails, but this was the only communication that we had as far as this went. I didn't even hear back from him in the form of a response from
Thank
the
you.
email.
Thank you. Commander Colbert, same question. What was your role in the ordering of the 13 police vehicles that are up for discussion?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I had no role in the involvement of ordering those 13 vehicles, none at all. I was never contacted, and I never spoke with Mr. Reeves.
Okay, and I'm assuming based on your answer, you didn't send any specs or requests for what you would like to have.
Absolutely not.
Okay, and let me ask you as well as Commander Titus, how long have you all been participating? What has been your historic role in the ordering of vehicles for the Gary Police Department?
Well, I've been a part of the garage for approximately 10 years. I've been assigned to the garage since 2017. Typically, I was there to assist Harlan Smith at the time, who was our vehicle maintenance superintendent, and then also our fleet manager prior to that. So I would assist him with the ordering process, which included speccing out the vehicles, grabbing all the equipment that we needed, making contact with whatever vendors we needed to make contact with.
Thank you. And Commander Titus, what has been your historic role?
So I've been the IT and network administrator for the police department since 2007. So I've had a long role in speccing out technology equipment, both in station and in the vehicles for the police department. I also, before it was removed from me in 2017, I used to be the commander over motor pool, but now that's special operations. So I would, kind of oversee those operations until that division was removed.
Thank you. Did either of you express concerns to the former chief or the current chief or any other leadership within the police department related to why you weren't involved in the vehicle ordering, or after the vehicles had come, why you weren't involved in that process?
Yes.
Yes.
Repeatedly to Deputy Chief Jackson and Chief Evans. I was frustrated because when I started seeing the amount of money that was being spent, I thought it to be ridiculous. And a lot of the equipment that was being purchased, that wasn't how we outfitted our vehicles. And I could not get a return phone call or any contact information. I couldn't get anything from this Eric Reeves, who was spending the money making these purchases on vehicles that weren't to our specs. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I too expressed concern to our chiefs, the same thing, because there is a certain equipment that we like for our vehicles. And one of the issues is we like to keep everything seamless. So if an officer has to move between vehicles, there will be no learning curve for the
Wood versus the Motorola radios, also because the county uses Motorola and I believe has encouraged all police departments in the area to do likewise.
Yes,
let me
ask. I'm sorry, Councilman, but yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. And I just wanted to piggyback off of Commander Titus. What she's saying is absolutely true, and it's also for uniformity and maintaining continuity, so that totally out the equation, because their radios are different. Their portable units are Motorola, so now when something happens, they're forced to rely on their on their portable unit to get them through a hostile situation, instead of using a car-mounted radio, which is what that's actually designed for.
Thank you. It was mentioned in our last meeting that some of this may or may not have had something to do, or communications could have happened with former Chief Liggins, who I believe left around end of June, mid-July of 2020, but certainly prior to the email you sent, Commander Titus, on September 23rd, 2020, offering your spec request, and certainly before the vehicles, I think, were in fact purchased at Bozak, and before certainly they were actually delivered. So it seems as though this really has very little to nothing to do with the former chief. Is that correct?
That is correct. As a matter of fact, the first time I was contacted in reference to the equipping of the vehicles, I want to say it was December. I believe the sales financing had finally were in their feelings, because they were under the, I'm thinking he thought maybe we were brand bashed, and that wasn't the case. It was just we specifically used Motorola's because, like I said earlier, for uniformity and continuity. After I shared my concerns, I was reassured that we would have the Motorola radios. I never got it. I was never able to get in touch with Eric Reeves to verify this, to make sure that this process happened, because all of the equipment was already paid for during this financing. So I just wanted to see to it that we got what we received, what we wanted, what we needed. And then I was told that that's what we were getting. I never heard anything else about it, never made contact with Eric Reeves. And then when the vehicles were ready, when we picked them up, we had these Kenwoods. And the only resolution to it, it's not a favorable one, because in the long run, we're actually going to have to buy Motorola radios to replace these Kenwoods. And then maybe hopefully we can sell these Kenwoods to another agency that's that uses this stuff. Maybe somebody that's on the second side of the 911 center. I don't know. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it, but that's the only way to make it right.
And not only that, so when the 17 public safety agencies in this county consolidated, that when they went out for bid for this mobile radio, this portable radio solution, they ended up with the Motorola product. Now you had some agencies, you got a few offshoot agencies, very small, that they were favorable for the Kenwood. So they, that's what they purchased. But in the long run, it was decided that that was the digital radio that the departments would go with. So I read over some of the correspondence that was that I received about the responses from Attorney Poe. And it looks like the vendor basically told Eric Reeves that there would be a cost savings with that Kenwood radio, which actually it wasn't. They spent $5,586 total on those radios, where those mobile radios from Motorola were a little bit less than $4,000. So I don't know where he was getting his cost savings from. But it just seems like they allowed the vendor to make that determination for them, because that was a preferred product. And as much as I've dealt with vendors will try to push their preferred product on you. But you kind of have to stick to, what you pretty much want, what you particularly want. And those are tried and true to us. They're the radios that have lasted. We've had Kenwoods before that have just died out on the officer. And that is a safety issue. So that was another reason that we went away from Kenwoods way back in the early 2000s. And not to say that their technology hasn't improved, but Motorola is a brand that's been around. They're a big name brand, and it was just our preferred product. So I just kind of wanted to add that in there too.
Well, thank you both. I want to turn now to the numbers. I'm looking at Exhibit H in the documents, Mr. Pohl, that you provided to the committee and the council. And it says the obligor acknowledgement. I think it's probably the easiest document to get a baseline sense of the cost, Exhibit H. And is everyone there? It has the vendor name and then the equipment type and the cost of the equipment. And I want to make sure that I and all of us are understanding what we are looking at. Are you there, Mr. Pohl?
I'm pulling it up right now. Hold
Okay.
on 1 second.
So in this, you have here 4 sort of categories. I want to go to the last category, which deals with the 8 2021 Ford Police Interceptors. And it has the cost of equipment at $54,283. And I want to confirm that at that price point, what are we talking about? Just the equipment or the equipment with the accessories and signage and installation? What are we looking at when we look at that number?
That is the total number of the for each vehicle. So with the equipment, the lights, the radios, that's what those are being equipped at as.
Okay. And for these are just your regular sedans, I guess, as it were. Were any of these EcoBoost? Do we know if there was EcoBoost technology on any of these vehicles?
Let's see, the F-150s, they're EcoBoost. The regular other 8, they're just your standard police interceptors. And also, I just want to add for clarification purposes, the 54 and some change, that's not the final price because we got an additional bill after the vehicles arrived for graphics that came out of the police department's budget, actually. And that was somewhere around an extra $600 a vehicle.
So we're really talking about roughly almost $55,000 just for this category, and I guess it would be the same going all the way up.
Yes, for each additional vehicle. And it really left a bad taste in my mouth because responsible, but this just added to it.
Let me thank you for that information. So I want to just deal with these set of vehicles here at the, now we know, roughly $55,000 total cost. So we ordered vehicles 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago. And I believe the total cost was less than $55,000. Mr. Pohl or Commanders Titus or Colbert or Chief Evans, what would we say was the number? I'm not looking at it right now. That was spent for the 2017 orders for vehicles.
I'm not sure on exactly how much was spent on those. I mean, I'm sure that, we can probably ask Mr. Roberts if there's been any changes in the cost between 2017 and 2021 vehicles, or 2020 vehicles. But I don't have the exact numbers. If the other individuals on the call have those numbers from 2017, obviously they could speak to that, but I wasn't prepared to speak to the 2017 vehicles.
Okay, basically what I can tell you, I had it's somewhere here, but I don't like comparing the 2017s to the 21s because these are actually 2 totally different animals because they were equipped totally different. And the only thing that I can tell you, which is more appropriate, and with the 2017s, we split some things up. The department bought some pieces of equipment. Those were not fully equipped. The base price at the time started, I believe it was $27,000 and some change. I need to see the numbers, but those cars were being completed for $33,000, $34,000. I believe it was 2 expeditions that came in at $44,000. To properly equip our vehicle today, a 2021, the way we need it to be equipped, we can do for less than $43,000. That's ready to hit the road, complete with light.
You used in prior years.
And okay, it's been Vinyl Graphics of Wisconsin. That's our wholesale dealer. So we buy the graphics in bulk at wholesale price. That's why we get them so cheap. It used to be our kits, I believe, were down to $130, $140 a piece, but due to COVID and a couple of other inflating factors, it went up to approximately $190. I'm sorry, $190 a car.
So,
And then the rest was just the other 130 was the install of the graphics.
okay. So let me, I guess, ask you, who, I'm looking through this material, who was the graphics person you just received the bill from?
Great Lakes LTD.
Great Lakes LTD. Mr. Pohl, are they an approved vendor of the city?
I actually don't know. I don't have any of the information about the graphics. I only have the information about the those that went in through the loan process with Republic First National and so basically the Ford Bozak purchases and then the Bartronic purchases. So I can't speak to those. I apologize.
Thank you. And just on the record, while we're having Mr. Pohl, is it true that there was no bidding at any time for the purchase of the vehicles in question?
Yes, that's my understanding. There was not a bidding process that the RFP process or public bid process. At the time, there was, we obviously had a pandemic going on and we were needing vehicles, under what were considered an emergency basis. And there was no, at the time, the decision was apparently made that it was unknown when those vehicles were going to be, any other vehicles were going to come available. So the purchase was made as an emergency purchase from what was indicated as a sole source.
Okay, so so there was no bid. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, was the state QPA, was there an inquiry made to Mr. Roberts or any other vendor who was an authorized state QPA vendor?
My understanding is there was not.
Okay, so there was no bidding and we did not use the state QPA. And just for the record, I know you spoke on this before, Mr. Roberts, who has, I believe, provided vehicles for us for some years. Mr. Roberts, you're currently muted, but I do want to ask you a question just to confirm. Mr. Roberts, were you ever contacted by any individual or entity or representative on behalf of the city of Gary and any of its entities related to the purchase of vehicles?
In the year 2020 you're talking about?
Yes.
No. In fact, I was wondering when we might hear from them.
Thank you.
Usually Harlan Smith would get a hold of me, but I hadn't heard from him in a couple of years.
Okay. So there were, in fact, vehicles being ordered, I recall our prior conversation, by police departments throughout the state. And I believe you participated in some of those during the pandemic in March and April and May. And of course, these vehicles only arrived here in January of 2021. So whatever urgency existed in February or March of 2020 wouldn't seem to be relevant to when we actually ordered and received the vehicles. But in any event, can you explain to whom you did or to what cities you did sell vehicles to? And I suppose those cities all bought them at the state QPA rate.
We sold lots of police vehicles to some of your neighbors. In fact, the East Chicago Police Department, the Dyer PD, Michigan City, Merrillville. A lot of the departments in your area had purchased vehicles from us, in addition to others in other parts of the state, all the way down to the city of Evansville. And there are just a lot of different entities that purchased police vehicles from us in 2020.
Thank you. And so looking at these 8 Ford Police Interceptors without any EcoBoost, that for which we paid $54,283, and that's of course including everything. Commander Colbert has said that it could have been done for less than $43,000 all in. What would have been our base price on the record if the vehicles had been ordered through you or through a similar QPA vendor during 2020?
Well, we are the QPA vendor. That's the thing.
Right.
There are no other vendors that win that contract. It's just whoever has the most competitive and most competent proposal to the state of Indiana is awarded that contract. And so that, for the last, since 1994, that's been us just all the time. So your competitive price is based on that contract price, but I saw a VIN number for some of the units that you did purchase, and those units are not standard. They have, and they're not EcoBoost, but they have the hybrid engine, which is a $3,530 upgrade over the base engine that we would quote for $31,255. So you've never purchased those from us before in the hybrid, but this apparently was, maybe that was something that the city felt was advantageous to them in terms of getting EPA points or whatever kind of advantage you might reap from that. But the ones you got, I think, are hybrids, and the majority of the units have no direct experience with selling equipment to you or any other entity. We always refer those to our subcontractor vendors, but typically those upfits run in the $5,000 to $7,000, $7,500 range. But I can't speak to what you purchased.
Yes, let me come right back to you. I want to confirm something. Mr. Pohl or Commanders Colbert or Titus, which of these 13 vehicles are hybrid?
None. What Sam is referring to, he's not referring to any of the original 13. There were 5 additional vehicles purchased. Those 5 are the hybrids. Those are the ones we're still waiting to receive. The original 8 Interceptor SUVs were all standard engine, what we typically purchase.
So given that fact, thank you, Commander Colbert, in fact, the QPA price would have been the same. It would have been the $31,255.25. And then, what you say? That's correct?
I'm sorry, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so I did, in fact, someone sent me a video, people send me all kinds of things, of these vehicles that are sitting on the lot at Bozak, which I guess must be the, I got this video 2 weeks ago, must be the vehicles at Bozak, which have not arrived yet, or I guess are going to be arriving soon. So you said—
That is correct.
Okay.
Oh, that is correct. We have not received them yet. The only thing we did was have the graphics put on them, but we're still waiting for them to receive their equipment. I'm not sure. I know it had to be ordered. I'm assuming that's the delay, because that was the delay with the first 13.
And did you or Commander Titus or you, Chief Evans, request hybrid vehicles for this next 5?
I absolutely did not.
No.
And you, Chief
No.
Evans? So
No.
who had the idea? And this is a more recent order, is that correct?
Yes.
This is, okay, do we know if these new vehicles were ordered after council had made an issue of the vehicles that had already been ordered? Do we know when these new vehicles were ordered?
I don't believe this had anything to do with the council. This was put in place after the original 13 were bought, and then these 8 more were ordered and then purchased. I believe there was a delay with the financing, but this was already in play.
Okay, so now you're getting.
But I
will
can,
be-
I can
Chief
add a little
Evans.
clarity on that point from what I was told, is that originally the original 13 were readily available when originally purchased, and that the other 5 had to be ordered, which is what I was told, which is what we were told. And we did not talk about hybrid or non-hybrid. We assumed that those vehicles were the same order as the previous vehicles. It wasn't until afterwards that we found out they were hybrids. And those vehicles, to my understanding, costs have been encumbered with the total cost of all of them. So it's not an additional purchase, it's one purchase. And I
Okay,
believe that as it's been said here, the vendor decided on which types of vehicles to get or how to get them.
so you're now receiving vehicles of a type that you did not ask for,
They're hybrid.
but you didn't ask for that. You don't necessarily want that.
No.
Okay. Mr. Roberts, just very quickly, I'm presuming that all of these vehicles that you sold to East Chicago and Maryville and Michigan City and Evansville and other places, were any of those hybrid?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, and so they all paid a base price of $31,255.25 for that police interceptor.
Yeah.
Okay, and so
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Commander Colbert, you said earlier that we could have outfitted fully our vehicles for less than $43,000. Can you walk us through how we would have gotten from the $31,255.25 base vehicle price to the, I guess, a number thereabout, $43,000? What would that look like in terms of the component parts and representative cost?
Councilman, give me 1 second. I just realized that I keep that information readily available, but I keep it on the phone that I'm using to do this meeting with.
Okay.
So let me just pull it up on my computer and I'll give it to you.
Thank you very much. While you are looking for that information, just as a point of information, there was an article that came out in the Northwest Indiana Times on March 24, 2021. And the title of this article is Lake County Commissioners OK Purchase of 18 New Sheriff Patrol Vehicles. And the article, and I've confirmed the veracity of the content of this article, it says that Lake County Sheriff Oscar Martinez Jr. appears to have persuaded the Board of Lake County Commissioners, at least to some of his purchase requests. The commissioners voted 3-0 at a special meeting Wednesday to buy 18 new Ford police utility vehicles from Bozak Ford. Sounds familiar. For $35,000. For $35,352.50 per vehicle, along with agreeing to spend at least $6,500 to paint and outfit the vehicles with police accessories. It goes on to say that those accessories include $11,025 worth of shark fin antenna for new and existing sheriff patrol vehicles that will enable officers to connect to the internet and other electronic resources while on the go. It's my understanding that even that additional $6,500 is something that's unique to the Sheriff's Department because they don't use the base black paint. They have the brown and tan paint that they put on the county sheriff vehicles, which is the reason they would have even that additional cost. But I'm concerned that with the same vendor, in a span of less than 4 months, 3 months, we're paying a base price that appears to be at the least $10,000 higher than our counterparts in the county. Do you know, Mr. Pohl, why Lake County Sheriff's Department is getting their vehicles at a price, and these vehicles are EcoBoost, I understand, why they're getting their vehicles at a price that is closer to the state QPA, even though Bozak is not a QPA vendor, than the city of Gary is?
Well, I'm looking at, let's see if I could find this. I was under the impression that it sounds like the base price was similar. The where I think there's the difference was the outfitting of the vehicles was more expensive.
Mr. Pohl, what's the base price for the vehicles that we ordered?
That's what I'm looking for right
So
now.
we started at 54,283, which now we know that's closer to 54,700 or so. So
So
did we spend $20,000 in equipment?
not 20. Let's see where we're at here. It looks like the base price of, well, these are the F-150s. You said that what type of vehicle did they actually purchase? What was the actual make and model?
They purchased it says Ford Police Utility Vehicles.
See,
I don't know the
I
make
don't-
and model.
see, I don't know if we can compare apples to apples with that. I
Okay.
will say that our base price for our vehicles, like for example, the F-150s was 38,630. Sorry,
Mhm.
$38,630. And then the Interceptor Explorers was 38,671. That's
Okay.
what I'm looking at as the base price there. And then lights and equipment, lights and radio equipment from Bartronics. The lights was a cost of $10,023, and the radios were $5,589 for the equipping the Explorers, the Interceptor Explorers.
And who chose Bartronics?
I'm assuming the purchaser was Eric Reeves.
Okay, and that's kind of, it looks like it's consolidated on the invoice from Bozak Ford. So so
That's
Bozak
correct.
handles the getting it done. I guess they pay the vendor, the sub vendor for.
I'm assuming. I'm not exactly sure how that works. We have separate invoices from Bartronics, and I don't know if they, as a matter of financing, they bundled them together in order to make it, one single purchase. That would be my
Okay.
assumption.
So it looks as though, now, Commander Colbert, back to you.
Okay.
We're trying to work our way from what Mr. Roberts here, who represents the state, some people said I saw something in social media, why would they bring on a competitor? Because he has a self-interest in ordering these vehicles. Well, it sounds as though he's not a competitor, he's the grantee. He's the recipient of the vendor relationship with the state. And he would be the place, in fact, with a capital T, that we would go to get the state QPA. So it's not a matter of his assessment being biased. It's simply his assessment is that which the state has authorized. So
Yes.
if we, just as a point of reference, when we start at 31,255.25, walk us through, Commander Colbert, our way up.
Okay, the beauty of the 2021s, although the base price is going up to 31,255.25 through the state QPA, there's a lot of things included now that we don't have to pay extra for, extra hole drilling, mounts, a lot of customization that they used to charge us for. So even though in the past the price was $27,000, it's actually only increased possibly a couple of $1,000 because they throw in all of this extra free stuff, which benefits us because after I start with my 31,255.25, my only next major expenditure is adding a Unity LED spotlight, which is $395. The rest of the equipment is basically $60, $50, $45, and then there's a $25 addition. And then I don't want to say specifically what each of these individual features are, but they're what's necessary in our cars.
Gotcha.
And then there's a $190 delivery fee, which brings us to a total of $32,020.25. I was also just recently made aware of an additional $60 option, but that will be it if I chose to add it. Our emergency equipment, including lights and console, I'm using our current pricing for our 2017s. It's $3,650 all in. Now, the beauty of that, while I know I can get under $43,000 as a whole, I've made changes to the lighting packages due to an upgrade in modern technology, which means we can get better, brighter for cheaper. So I'm expecting that 3650 to go down once I'm finished with my quote from Code 3 to do our computer, our dock for the computer, and our Motorola radio. The equipment combined is $5,500. That's for all three, the computer, the dock, and the radio. Now, to have everything installed, the emergency equipment, the lights, the console, the computer, the dock, and the radio, $1,300. That's a medium price because some cars would be $1,200, some cars would be $1,400. It just based upon tweaking. That brings us to a total of $10,962. Oh, I'm sorry. What I did, I used the Great Lakes graphic price of $512 a vehicle, which on our end would actually be $320 a vehicle using our vendor and our installer. But using their graphic guide for the high end, that brought me to a total of $10,962. Combined, that's a grand total of $42,982.25. And that's going on the high end.
So
Make sure you add in the e-ticket though, because even when you add that in, that's only an additional $762. So we still wouldn't make it to that price.
Correct, Commander, but recently, because we've been getting e-tickets and radars for free, we hadn't been planning on including those into the prices.
Yeah, we only get those, that's dependent. We can't depend on that for free all the time.
So if
we have 15 that we still have to put out. So
I know, but I'm just saying the $762 still not going to get you to the base price of the car. Right. That's my point.
Right. So is it fair to say that even if we have the Cadillac version, the Rolls-Royce version, all the gadgets and equipment that we would like and lettering, that let's say $43,000. And it looks as though even the $54,283, you got a bill for $600, so that's actually $54,883. So arguably, we spent about $12,000 more per vehicle than we could have if we had followed our, if you will, standard operating procedures in terms of who and how police vehicles are ordered in the city of Gary. Is that a reasonable assessment?
Correct.
As it relates to these vehicles?
That's correct.
Okay. Let me now turn to my colleagues and open it up for questions. And before we do that, I want to acknowledge our internal auditor, Ms. Roxanne Williams, who is on the call. Obviously, I suppose what is past is prologue. That's where hopefully a new beginning in terms of correcting what has happened. It's obviously inappropriate for us to be spending nearly $12,000 more per vehicle than we need to, given the fact that we probably could have bought, I don't know, 8 to 10 more vehicles had we followed our standard operating procedures. And I believe the chief noted in our last meeting on this that we have about 50 2010 Crown Victorias, which are still on the street. And obviously that's not acceptable. So we need to be spending our funds as judiciously as possible to ensure that we're getting the most bang for our buck and recovering as many officers as possible with the quality and of vehicles and that they deserve to do what they do. But in any event, I'd like to ask you, Ms. Williams, what, from an internal auditing perspective, since you're our internal auditor, what is your perspective on what has happened, and perhaps if there's a roadmap going forward to prevent our police department from receiving vehicles they didn't ask for, that are equipped with equipment they didn't ask for, with vendors with whom they're unfamiliar, and by persons who are operating outside of their conversation or with no relationship to them?
Can you that you got a loaded questions there. So
It is, and I apologize. Let me just restate. Let me restate it simply. How do you intend to ensure, number one, that this never happens again? Number two, what internal protocols were missed that would allow this to happen anyway? I don't understand how, for years, right, we have a way in which you order vehicles. Now apparently there's a new way of doing it. It's one thing if the new way is equal to or less than in terms of cost, even adjusting for inflation. But it's quite another if we're spending a substantially greater amount of money when we shouldn't have to do that. So what are the internal controls, if you will, in terms of how things are ordered and how approvals are made for individuals within the administration to go out and purchase vehicles? And maybe if there's something specific to the police department, we can drill down on that.
okay, and what the meeting was about, the investigation. So I'm just kind of learning tonight. So in order for me to say what can I do then, to ensure that this doesn't happen again, I would need to investigate a little bit further in terms of implementing change, so to assure that this won't happen again. But typically, a large amount of money like that would be bidded out. In this case, in the past practice, from my understanding, the vehicle maintenance person would usually go through the QPA protocol, only because it's a cost savings, and that's something that is a special, that's something that the State Board of Accounts recommend, but is not required.
So if I could,
If you don't, go ahead, Mr. Pohl.
yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So a couple of things that I just kind of wanted to mention, as it pertains to, you know, the analysis that was provided by Commander Colbert, which again, Commander Colbert and Commander Titus are fantastic at their job. And, you know, if the point here is that they obviously need to be involved with purchases going forward, that's a point that's very well received and will absolutely be followed going forward. That is definitely something that I think is a clear lesson that's been learned in this situation, is that, you know, when you're buying vehicles for a department, you know, follow what the department's actual needs and you know, what their needs and what their institutional knowledge is. They're going to know what vendors to use or what vendors they like, or, you know, and that's always helpful in the, you know, it's not necessarily what's determinative. It's ultimately determined by the administration, but absolutely, you know, these two have been here for a very, very long time. They know the needs of the department. They know the needs of what the county, you know, what the, you know, how to best interact with the county. And, you know, as far as going forward, that will definitely be something that is observed and definitely followed. As it pertains to the actual purchase prices, I think we have numbers that I think Mr. Roberts can probably best speak to these. And I think these are the numbers that we received from him. I think the base price for the police vehicles was $35,800 for the model, the Interceptor Explorers. And we essentially paid the amount that I had provided you, which was $38,671. So it's a difference of about $3,000, a little bit less than $3,000 for the base model. I think where the biggest change is that price in the lights and radios, and us using a different vendor, where I believe, you know, that's an expertise that Mr. Roberts does not have, and we would have to rely on Mr. Colbert, or, you know, Commander Colbert and Commander Titus for. But ultimately, I think, you know, this was an outlier as far as purchasing goes, because these purchases were anticipated and made during kind of the, you know, during the height of the pandemic, April, everybody not really knowing when we're going to get these vehicles. And the the interpretation of the situation was get these vehicles while you can, because we have no idea when or how this pandemic is going to play out. So if they're here and you can get them allocated to you now, figure out financing and go forward. And I think that was, at the direction of the SBOA. I know that they were very, the SBOA has standards which you have to follow. You have to follow your purchasing standards, except for an emergency situation, which we believe applied. And then in addition to that, you have your sole source, which was, believed to be the case. But ultimately, I think the direction from the SBOA this year was ultimately follow your policies as best as you can. But obviously, there are things to be, there are exceptions to be made given the circumstances.
Mr.
It
Paul,
wasn't.
if I may, you made a lot of points. Let me just first say, I think that I understand your role and what you're here to do. But I think the COVID excuse is a bit played out.
It is at this point.
If we were the only, it obviously was then too, because we didn't get the vehicles until 2 months ago. But in any event, it's clear that several other police departments successfully ordered vehicles, and many of them received those vehicles before we did. So there's never an emergency, I think, that would justify doing what happened. And it certainly doesn't follow our own internal controls. So let's be clear on that. Now, you made a statement that the base price of $35,000, I believe that related to hybrids. And all of our vehicles are not hybrids, only the 5 that are coming. The other vehicles are, as I understand it, to respond is that help us understand how purchasing takes place. And maybe, I don't know, I don't understand how someone can, on their own volition, go out and do all of this and it be approved internally without any, I guess, checks and balances, if you will, with the department that's receiving the vehicle, or no one checking and saying, well, what did we pay last time? Why are we not doing a bid? Why are we not following the state QPA? These seems like checklist questions that would be standard operating procedure. Certainly, it's one thing to go out and order lunch for a meeting, but it's quite different to order in the hundreds of thousands of dollars equipment that is public safety equipment, no less. So can you walk us through, Ms. Williams, what is the process for an employee to order equipment?
Sure. Typically, they will start off with a requisition. Anything that's over, I think, $1,000, they have to have. Sorry, I'm going off the top of my head. Give me 1 second, because I don't do this daily. So the city requires one quote when purchasing anything less than $1,000. Anything that's over $1,000 and 5, it requires 3 quotes. These quotes are typically submitted to the purchasing person. She looks over the information to make sure everything is proper, like the 3 quotes. If you're not able to obtain 3 quotes and there's a sole source, meaning that there's no other person that provides this type of equipment or anything, then no 3 quotes is needed. Anything that's 5,000 to 100,000, it requires 3 sealed quotes. which are open and awarded, it's not the purchase agency like it says on here. It's usually done at the Public Works.
So, Ms. Williams, if I may ask a question, just for clarification,
Sure.
is it that between 5,000 and less than 75,000 that is formal sealed quotes, but more than 75,000, then you have to do the formal sealed bid process? That is per the City of Gary's purchasing policy.
The formal, because I'm looking at this level right here, and it says that anything that's greater than 75 and less than 1,000, it requires a formal sealed bid. And
Right.
it must be advertised.
Okay.
So, President Godwin, if I may, so counselors, in your packet, you received policy FP 206.1. That is the City of Gary policy and procedures for purchasing. And the question that President Godwin just asked Ms. Williams, the chart breakdown that she just gave us is listed on page 6. And so it describes the range in terms of what requires an informal verbal quote, what requires a formal sealed bid, and then those purchases greater than 75,000, it should be a formal sealed bid. And I think that this is in parallel with our state statute requirements as well.
Let me just say that this was revised in 2016, July 2016, the levels was revised. And so anything that's $1,000 or less, it requires one written quote. So that's not on page 6 because it was revised in July of 2016. It's when they upgraded the system, they changed the city purchasing levels.
Okay. So was that level also updated in the official policy for the city? Is there a new revised document?
No, other than the one page, I guess it's an amendment, but it's not really saying that it's an amendment to the policy. But this is the policies that we've been following since July 2016.
Okay. So Attorney Paul, if we can talk to our new controller to make sure that information is updated into the official policy.
Absolutely.
To the charts, and to make sure that we all have a copy of that, or if it needs to come from the council, wherever the appropriate process will be for that.
Absolutely. That can very easily be done. I apologize if I provided the wrong one. I think I included the wrong one with the packet. Yeah, I think the one that we had included was the prior purchasing policy. I do recall when the 2016 change happened. I believe that was when we were getting a new controller.
We were updating our system.
That's correct.
Yeah, our new purchasing system. So it was, instead of doing it manual, it's now online where you can submit your quotes. Departments can submit their quotes to the finance department purchasing person.
To be clear, what was the requirement for a purchase of this size?
Formal seal.
A formal
Formal
seal.
seal bids.
Okay. And the only way you don't have to do a formal seal bid, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you go through the state QPA. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I want to just turn back just quickly to something that Mr. Pohl said, and I want to ask Mr. Roberts, since he is the state QPA, a person, and not just a competitor, as some folks want to harp on social media, but he's in fact the state QPA person. Did police departments order vehicles from you or inquire about vehicles during the early stages of the pandemic, March, April, May of 2020?
Certainly they did.
So the fact that there was a pandemic going on had absolutely nothing to do with one following, either if they weren't going to follow a bid process, contacting you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of departments know the correct procedure, and it is, as you have stated, either you take sealed bids for X number of dollars, I think it's over 75,000, or you can purchase off the state contract, which eliminates the need in the eyes of the State Board of Accounts for competitive bids, since the state took the responsibility of establishing that competitive bid price for the entire state of Indiana. And it's designed to save all participants money and time in going out for 3 formal bids and anything else that's involved. Typically, that stuff takes a lot of time.
Do you have an example of any police department who ordered or inquired about vehicles in March, April, May of 2020 at the height of the pandemic? When did they, in fact, receive those vehicles? If there was anyone who ordered in March, April, May, as you suggest, when did those vehicles, when were they delivered to those police departments?
We had deliveries as soon as the plant reopened. Actually, I think if I remember correctly, it was in April. But as soon as the plant reopened, the shipping started again. So anytime after, let's say May,
So some people ordered when this pandemic was making us all freak out. They ordered their vehicle in March and April of 2020, and they received them as early as May. And
No, they could have ordered those in February even.
Okay, so if you ordered them, let's say you ordered them in March and April when the mask mandate came down, and
all right, well,
when would they have arrived? When did they arrive?
Those are typically 90-day deliveries.
Okay. So people received them in August of 2020, July of 2020, when they ordered in March and April?
Sure, we were very busy at that time.
Okay. And just to refresh my memory, our vehicles were not actually ordered until later in 2020. Is that correct, Chief Evans or Mr. Pohl? When did we actually order these vehicles?
We actually ordered and were allocated these vehicles in 8 items that went with the vehicle.
Mr. President, can I get a clarification question real quick for Attorney Pohl? So Attorney Pohl, just want to make sure I'm following. So it was ordered in April, but the purchase order was not submitted until November the 12th, I think it was. Is that due to the financing issue from April to November of last year?
My understanding is that they were allocated in April. They were getting financing and formalizing that, formalizing the financing throughout the summer, and then also starting the process of getting the other items ordered, the lights and radios, and that was towards the end of the summer, early fall.
Okay.
I think
And
September
also, I'm sorry, go ahead, Attorney Pohl.
I think September was the date that I'd heard.
Okay. And if I may, President Godwin, just one additional follow-up. I just wanted to make sure that I understood. So the reasoning for this purchase utilizing the state statutes that you just mentioned, dedicating this an emergency purchase, is there a process when a purchase should be to designate something as an emergency? And I'm asking that because the meeting that we had February the 11th was the public safety meeting. And this is when we first spoke about understanding how the purchase of these vehicles went. And I do want to note that, from my understanding, Eric Reeves was the only person who probably had all the insight, and so it's unfair. He was requested and asked to attend this hearing tonight, but he's not here to speak. So that's unfair. Unfortunately, Attorney Pohl, it's on you to answer the question. And so at that meeting on February the 11th, there was no discussion about this being an emergency purchase. It was just stated that there was cars in the pipeline, and the only dealership in the state of Indiana who had access to these particular vehicles was this Lakeshore / Bozak. And so this is the first that I've heard of it being designated an emergency purchase. And so I just wanted to get a clarification on that.
So you're absolutely correct, Councilwoman. There is a process for that. What is supposed to occur is that under an emergency circumstance or any of the the law department or the Board of Works itself, essentially stating what the conditions are and explaining that on the record as to what conditions apply pertaining to the special purchase method that's being presented before the Board of Works.
Should that accompany the contracts? Because I didn't see anything in the packet that we received stating that this was an emergency purchase.
I think you're correct. I don't think that was included in there. I know that Mr. Reeves' position was that these were, an emergency situation, given the fact that, as he had stated, there were no other vehicles that were available. The plants were being shut down indefinitely, and he needed to get whatever vehicles he could on the streets of Gary immediately, given the fact that he had officers riding 2 or 3 to a vehicle.
And this was solely on the discretion of communication from Eric Reeves, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, Mr. Pohl, you said that there was a declaration to be provided. Did that ever happen?
I'm not sure. I'd have what that was a lot of the purchases, I think, or a lot of the municipal purchases across the state and across the country at that time were, if you can get your hands on masks, if you can get your hands on whatever, get it now. And I know that was, seemingly a very common directive, that where the SBOA had stated, in multiple, trainings and things of that nature, definitely follow your policies as close as you possibly can. But given the pandemic that we're going into, make sure that, you're taking care of your community.
Ms. Williams, are you aware of any declaration that was issued at the time of this quote unquote emergency in April of 2020?
No, I'm not.
Okay. We were also told during that last meeting that Councilwoman Atkins mentioned that the state QPA had been contacted and that the state QPA had closed. I have now come to know that that's not even possible. So, and just for the record, Mr. Roberts, you said you were never contacted by the city of Gary, but we were told you were contacted. So, Mr. Pohl, do you know otherwise? Can you affirmatively say that there's a record of Mr. Roberts being contacted, as we were told?
Not.
Okay, so there's no record of the state QPA vendor having been contacted. And I believe we were told, and I think there's a recording of that there was an attempt in February of 2020 for the state QPA to be contacted, and that in February of 2020, that it had closed. And of course, we know that that's not how that works. Once the rate is set, the rate is what it is. So I'm just going to be frank. It sounds to me more like this is you're a lawyer, I understand. You have to come up with a defense to explain why our standard operating procedures were not followed and why the state QPA was not followed. As you already know, I don't buy that. And of course, too many other police departments across this region and this state, obviously they were not in another world or universe. They were existing in the same pandemic, and they managed to order vehicles and in fact get them before we did. Secondly, the point you raise about finances, as you well know more than me, is nothing new for the city of Gary in terms of our ordering. Mr. Roberts, again, state QPA vendor, not a competitor, but who has this grant, explained that it's not the first time the city has had a challenge with financing, and that's not an overcomable problem. So, Mr. Roberts, can you explain, maybe there were other cities that had financing issues, I don't know, but how you handle or would have handled financing issues if you had been given the opportunity as the state QPA vendor to provide vehicles for us.
And in fact, there were a few communities that felt like due to pandemic layoffs and a loss in tax revenue from those layoffs, that they might not be able to go forward with their purchases. For instance, city of Evansville ordered a number of units, and then they hit the wall and panicked real quickly. And they called me and said, "Hey, Sam, I'm sorry, but looks like financially we won't be able to pay for these units." And I said, "Well, don't you worry. When they do come, we'll have them. And somebody will have bought them, or you can buy them still." But then, just within a couple or 3 weeks, they said, "Well, we want to go ahead and order those vehicles again." So I reordered those. They came as 2021s. They got theirs, and there are many other happy users of those Evansville cancellations. So, and that was not the only community. There were a few others.
What are some of the financing solutions that are available to police departments, cities within the state of Indiana to be able to get financing?
There are the one that the city has already contacted, the First Republic Trust, or whatever. They're in Rochester, Indiana, I believe. They are an independent financing source, a bank of sorts. There are several other finance vendors that we can use, or the city itself can go and approach the state of Indiana for the Indiana Bond Bank financing. And that is the same as a QPA, quantity purchase award type of contract, that is awarded to a bank or a lender based on an extremely low rate and so forth. And right now, the Indiana Bond Bank uses a bank in Wabash, Indiana, of all places. But we've helped that bank get financing for several communities, and that would be my suggestion, is to approach the Indiana Bond Bank.
I'll let the chief, you're muted right now.
Okay. The challenges that I'm aware of is that back in 2019, when we attempted to refinance with Ford Credit to do another purchase while we still had a couple of payments to go, it was denied. And we did look to other sources, meaning finance did. And I can't talk about the financial aspect of it at all, to overcoming the financial aspects of how we would finance another purchase of vehicles, because we've needed vehicles for quite a while. So I can say that we have had challenges, but we have overcome them with alternative means of financing. How that's been achieved, you would have to ask someone who's in finance to explain it better than I could. It's not our realm.
Well, thank you. And to your knowledge, either Commanders Colbert or Titus, or to our internal auditor, Ms. Williams, has financing in the past prevented us from following our standard operating procedures of a sealed bid and or using the state QPA? Whoever would like to go first. Has that been have we said we can't use the state QPA, or we can't do a bidding because we may have financing problems? Is that relevant to who we use to order the vehicles?
I think that's more of a finance question, so I know I can't speak.
Let me ask it this way. To your knowledge, during your time here, have we ordered police vehicles outside of a formal bid process, given the amount that we spent, and or using the state QPA?
To my knowledge, I've always known us to use the QPA process.
Thank you. Commanders Colbert and Titus, is that also your understanding?
I'm trying to be cautious about going on the record because of the 2010s pop in my mind. I know those were grant purchased vehicles, so I'm not sure if the QPA applied. It was a large number of vehicles, but I don't have that information available. That would have to come from finance. So I'm not trying to dodge the question. It's just it was 2010. I'm not sure.
But in every other instance where you were present, and to your knowledge, when we ordered vehicles, and we didn't start having financial problems last year, did we always use the state QPA and or the bidding processes in our own SOPs?
Oh, most definitely. Yes.
Right. So our financial problems have nothing to do with how we order vehicles.
That is correct.
And is that also your understanding, Commander Titus?
Yes, we've mostly used state QPA when we've purchased vehicles.
Thank
I
you.
like to make, I want to make one correction.
Mhm.
I've only known us to use the QPA when we're purchasing a large sum of cars. I just want to make that clear. Not necessarily if we buy one or two vehicles.
Right. And so in your professional opinion, would this have been the type of purchase where we should have either one, used the state QPA, or two, had a formal sealed bid process based on your understanding of the rules for the city?
Yes. I would say either a formal sealed bid or the QPA.
Thank you.
Just because it's based on the threshold of the purchasing level.
Right. And so I want to just quickly go back, and I'm going to stop myself. But if someone is ordering something, I want to be very clear about this. They tell someone in finance, I want to order this. And who is that person that makes a judgment call about the appropriateness of it, about whether they're going to approve it? I mean, what is the chain of command for this process?
Are you asking me?
It can be you or Mr. Poe.
Oh,
Well, I can answer that. So, there's the different levels of purchases. There's the different, the different level amounts. So in a situation where it's, it's above the 75,000, there needs to be 3 sealed bids that are provided to the Board of Public Works. Those are opened and they're awarded based upon the high, or in the best interest of the city, the most responsive bidder. So you may get a bid that's super low for, 50 police vehicles at a rate of $5,000 a piece, but you look at the vehicles and you're like, okay, yeah, these are junker cars. If they're the quality of which they're sought, and that's determined by the Board of Public Works, that purchase then is approved there. Then it it's along with the QC12, a QC40, and then it goes to finance for processing.
May I ask just quickly, Commander Colbert or Titus, you said that we've used the state QPA in the past. Would you say that you felt like we got vehicles that were inferior or junker or not up to par with the vehicles that you all ordered?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because even though you go with the state QPA just guarantees you the best price. So in our situation, I believe the base Explorer Interceptor SUV police vehicle price starts at $38,000 and some change. We get that same base model through the QPA for $31,255. We also get to upfit them any way that we want. As I stated before, Ford has made major strides by including a lot of the things that we used to add on. Like, for example, Sync Radio, for instance, was a $267 option in the past. Now it's included, it's free. So because they include Bluetooth radio. So you can have whatever options that you like. It's not a bare bones car. It's what you need as a police officer. And then you add your additional equipment to that. So these are not stripped down. plain Jane vehicles by any means.
Commander Colbert, if I may, are there any other items, for example, let's say like tires or something like that, that the police department will utilize the QPA for? Anything else that the police department will frequent in terms of equipment?
Yeah, basically tires. But usually all of that stuff is handled through vehicle maintenance. Whoever your vehicle maintenance superintendent at the time, he verifies all of these things, that these are the prices that we're getting for the materials that we need. But everything is through the state QPA. I believe the state also uses them for their salt purchases.
Okay, very good. Who's the current vehicle maintenance lead?
The vehicle maintenance superintendent is Don Plog, Plohg, I believe.
Thank you.
And can I ask, when did he come on board? To your knowledge?
I want to say, I know it was during the administration change. I don't remember the exact date that he started.
Let me ask it this way. Was he employed by the city of Gary on or after, say, March 1 of 2020?
Or Chief Evans, could you answer that question?
I don't, because there was another vehicle maintenance superintendent prior to Don coming on board. So I'm not sure what was that guy's last day and then when Don started. I'm sorry, you'd have to get that one from somebody in personnel or something. I cannot think of what day Don started. But I know he was not here in March or April.
We've had a couple. This is to my knowledge, is our second vehicle maintenance director or manager. I believe that this individual employee, and then like Commander Colbert just stated, personnel HR would have to confirm it. I believe was working in another part of the city before taking his position, but I do not know his term of employment. To my knowledge, and I, like the commander said, I don't know when he started vehicle maintenance, but when this process began and up until, I don't know when he started vehicle maintenance.
Thank you. Other colleagues have questions? Councilman Brewer?
Mr. President, just do a little housekeeping real quick. I know it was stated at the beginning of the meeting everyone was here, but I don't see the mayor here. And I'm going to go down the list that we received, that individual that was received this and requested to be at this meeting. The mayor is not here, as far as I can see. Mr. Eric Reeves, Director of Community Investment, is not here. Arlene Colvin, she was the acting controller and chief of staff at that time. She's not here. So there's 3 individuals that was requested to be here that's not here at this meeting. So I want the record to show that.
Thank you, and I agree that, you know, those who we ask should come or send their designee and let us know who that designee is going to be. Because I think I understand in one case there is a reason for why he can't be here. But in any event, I also want to recognize that Sergeant Wolf, the president of the Fraternal Order of Police, is here. And I think it would be good for us to hear from him if he's available in terms of what his perspective is on this, because I'm presuming that he wants as many as possible of his members to have the best vehicles available. And many of them are obviously still driving very old vehicles. So,
Mr. President, before Sergeant Wolf come, I do have a couple of questions I would like to ask. I heard it stated about the hybrid vehicle that was purchased. What would be the purpose of purchasing a hybrid vehicle for the police department?
I'm assuming gas savings.
Gas savings is the only thing that I can think of. We've had hybrids before in the police department and throughout the city. Our experiences with them is that when they're under warranty, they're great, very efficient vehicles. They have the power we need. But when the warranty is over and we have to keep our vehicles a long time, that getting them fixed requires a lot more financing because they are a specialty vehicle. They can't be fixed at our garage. They have to be sent back to the dealership. And they have a particular set of problems that a regular gas vehicle doesn't have. In 2010, just giving a history lesson, that grant required us to buy alternative fuel vehicles and hybrids, and that's what we purchased them, and that's where we gained our experience with them from. That, you know, outside of warranty, they can be very difficult to maintain.
And I asked that question because I've been on the council for a while now, and I remember once we was not able to fix those vehicles, they sat along the police department for several years. They're just sitting there, practically vehicles, but it was too expensive for us to maintain those vehicles.
They're very expensive to fix.
Okay. My next question is, why Bozak Ford? Why was that the place picked out of all dealerships? Why Bozak Ford?
I don't know.
I have no
Yeah.
answer for you, Councilman. I have none because I was not a part of the purchase transaction at all. I have no idea why they went to Bozak / Lakeshore.
Okay.
My understanding is that that the purchasing party, Mr. Reeves, was in discussions with it was at, I guess, Lakeshore Ford at the time, and they had the vehicles readily available. Whereas other places you had to essentially order them and then wait for them to come in. My understanding is that those vehicles were there, except for the hybrids that were purchased later, and that their intent was to get those vehicles as soon as possible. I guess the holdup with the financing was what delayed them. I guess that's the best explanation I could give at this time.
When did this go before the Board of Works?
This ultimately went before the Board of Works when the financing was cleared, which was in November of 2020. I think November 3rd of 2020.
So we knew we needed vehicles, say, February, and we started ordering vehicles, but no one was aware that we was getting these vehicles until November.
I don't know who all knew of the vehicles from April until November. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
We certainly knew we had other options, or should have known. We had other options in terms of ordering vehicles. Why would Public Works approve that and not stop that order and use the process? Look, we had almost 6 months. Commander Titus sent a notice September 23rd, I believe. So there was obviously conversations going on. Why would they approve that? Or could they have simply just canceled the order? It seems to me that if we had used the state QPA, even in November, we would have gotten the vehicles roughly around the same time as we in fact ended up receiving them, nearly a year later from the April. That was a year ago, right? So what happened? Why would Public Works simply approve that without questioning whether, number one, there had been a formal sealed bid, or number two, why the state QPA wasn't being used?
My assumption is that they were probably operating under the same reasoning as the original order, which was get these vehicles as soon as possible. I think canceling the order at that point may have jeopardized it, several months more. I believe the standard that Mr. Robertson provided was 90 days. If they had waited from April until November, it'd come before them in November, and then they'd stated, okay, well, we're going to cancel this and wait additionally upwards of 90 more days. That's my assumption, is that the deal had already been made, that the order had, I should not say the deal, but the order had already been made. The cars had been allocated, the financing had been secured, and they were just, because of that long delay period, it just makes this kind of an outlier. And I think, just to be absolutely clear, there's the city's position on this, the administration's position on this, is this definitely could have been handled in a better way. Starting with Commander Colbert and Commander Titus, and this would go for any purchase, not just necessarily them and their expertise, but any purchase for any departments. Ultimately, the city the city's position on this is that this would not happen again in this way. I mean, we would not ever hopefully find ourselves in a pandemic, but we would also never have an individual that would, that would kind of spearhead these things on behalf of the departments like this. So, I mean, I know that, Mr. President, you had stated, oh, well, you sound as if you're a defense attorney, and I'm really not. My interests and the city is, the administration's interests and the mayor's interests are all the same as your guys' interests, which is ensuring that the city is acting effectively, efficiently, and in the best interest of the city. I think at the time, the idea was get cars as soon as possible, because we don't know when they're going to get them again. But ultimately, I don't think that this is, we know that this is not the end of it. It's not okay, hey, sorry. But this is something that I think the city will actively be addressing going forward.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that. And I guess the reason why I ask about Public Works is that, to me, it raises a larger issue. And maybe Ms. Williams, you can chime in as well, because if Public Works is approving orders or requisitions and not asking in November, right? I mean, we're not talking about March or April. By this point, several police departments around the state had already ordered and received their vehicles in June, July, August, September, even neighboring police departments. So it's very clear that you could get vehicles, right? And the plants were open and so forth. So I guess my concern is that there was never a declaration, at least there doesn't seem to be any production of one, in either April or in November of 2020. So why would the Board of Public Works approve these contracts without asking whether our standard operating procedures have been followed? Number one, was there a sealed bid? Number two, why aren't we using the state QPA? That's my first question. What is their checklist and why aren't they making sure? Maybe other instances, right? This just may be the one that we caught, right? Where that questioning is not happening. But I guess start with that. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Ms. Williams, about sort of how this operates. How could they approve something so large without inquiring?
I don't know that I can answer that question, to be quite honest with you, because typically it's something that's voted on as more than one person. I'm not sure. I
Who's on the? Who's? I mean, I want to be clear.
Question. Who's on Public Works, Mr. Poe?
Board of Works consists of Trent McCain, Arlene Colvin, and Mr. Peller. I forget Mr. Peller's first name. And I do believe they did inquire. I hate to speak.
None of them are here.
Not at this time. I would state though that I do believe that there was the inquiry as to whether, what was the issue with the bidding process, and I believe the answer that was given to them was that ultimately it was an emergency purchase because of the lack of availability of vehicles as represented by Mr. Reeves.
And so, if Councilman Barnes Caldwell, I guess what I think you're asking, I think Councilman Brewer and myself is asking, why aren't those individuals? I mean, we sent out a notice and an agenda, right, to all of these parties, including Ms. Williams, on March 29th. So people were aware, right, and there were calendar invites given. Is there a reason why these are critical persons in the process? Controller, Chief of Staff, Corporation Counsel at the time, why weren't they, and actually President of the Board of Works?
Mr. President, I feel very cheated this evening because we have Attorney Poe that's assuming and telling me what he thinks happened or took place. And Attorney Poe, you can't tell me that because you're not Eric Reeves and he's not here to answer my questions. Right now, I think Eric Reeves should be stripped of any and every little piece of power that he has operating in the city of Gary, because he's wasting my money, he's wasting my time, he's wasting the citizens of Gary's money and time, assuming Mr. Sams, Mr. Roberts over there, he wasn't contacted. Eric is just doing what Eric wants to do. we have competent employees, Commander Titus and Commander Colbert, who are used to doing this. My whole thing is, if you don't know what you're doing, ask somebody. They'll help you out. Nobody wants to take all the glory. It's good that, oh, I can do this and I can do that. But if you don't know, ask somebody and they'll tell you what to do. But to sit here and constantly waste money and time, you know, how many payrolls is he getting paid off of? How many budgets? And he's messing up. He's messing them bad. And he's not here to talk about it. I don't know what to call him today. Chief of staff, deputy mayor, whatever. He's not here today. But all of them are empowering him to do this foolishness that he's doing. I don't want to have another meeting, another evening to come back because of Attorney Colvin, she isn't here. Attorney McCain, he isn't here. Eric Reeves isn't here. The mayor isn't here. What do we have to do? We have to go in front of a judge?
No, I don't think it's
Well, I'll let
necessary to go
Attorney
in front of a
Williams
judge.
answer that question from Councilwoman Barnes-Caldwell. What is the procedure when those who are invited have not attended or let us know that they're not available and requested another time? Attorney Williams, are you available?
Yes, I'm here. You could exercise the subpoena power, which would have to go before the circuit court judge to actually enforce the subpoena power, but that would be the next step. Compelling them to attend.
Oh, so I was going to ask that as a follow-up question to Attorney Williams' comment. What will we be subpoenaing? Because, you know, what will be just his presence? To what? Tell us what we already know?
Documentation that you don't have.
So I think collectively we have all the documentation.
Presence.
It's just the presence for us to tell us.
Yep. So what I would think is then that I'm open, and I certainly agree with Councilwoman Barnes-Caldwell that, and I know, again, I don't want to state it publicly. I know why one particular person isn't present, but those others could be here and should be here. And so I don't have a problem rescheduling and giving them an opportunity to answer, because there seems to be very little accountability. And I've said it multiple times that Mr. Pohl is often sent out, and it's nothing against him personally, but sent out to take the heat for others' actions. And he cannot be responsible for what other people have done. So I think the point is very well taken, Councilwoman Barnes-Caldwell. I agree. I am open, you're the investigation committee chair, to giving another opportunity for obviously a much briefer meeting to understand why these things happen and what the corrective action steps are to prevent it from happening again. It is clear to me that our internal controls could not have been followed. It's also clear that the Board of Works, you can't, November of 2020, I mean, let's get real. We all knew that police departments had already received vehicles. We know we use the state QPA, I'm told, even to order tires, right? So this is not anything new. So I just don't understand why the right people aren't here. I don't understand why there seems to be this emergency defense when obviously others follow the law when it comes to how vehicles and other items should be purchased by cities in the state of Indiana. So I just want to make that clear. And Ms. Williams, I'm not sure if you got to answer. You said that you couldn't explain why they would, why the Board of Works would simply allow this to happen in November. But I wanted to ask a follow-up in the sense of what if the Board of Works has said, you know what, this is not following the city's protocols, we're going to cancel this order, right? We're not going to go through with this order. Or in fact, we know that the actual work for the installation, for the lettering, for the lights and so forth, the other equipment, that didn't even happen until I believe December and or early January. So there was plenty of time, absent the actual vehicles themselves, to say, wait a minute, something is wrong here. We need to talk to Commander Titus, who sent a letter in September. You need to talk to Commander Colbert, who complained to the chief and others about not being involved in this. It wasn't a secret that vehicles were coming, right? So it wasn't as though Mr. Reeves was the only person in the city who knew in April of 2020 that at some point vehicles were going to come. It's pretty clear that Commanders Colbert and Titus knew that vehicles were going to come before the November vote of the Board of Works, had expressed concern about their not being invited to be involved. But no one rang the alarm, if you will, who had the power to do that, to stop what happened at the Board of Works. So let me ask the question, Ms. Williams, could we have, to your knowledge, and Mr. Cole may be able to answer as well, could we have the Board of Works say we're not going to approve this?
I mean,
And what would have been the consequence?
yes, theoretically, the Board of Works is not required to approve necessarily anything that's presented to it. The Board of Works can approve, they can modify, they can deny. It's essentially a administrative body that makes those the purchasing decisions. They're the purchasing agent for the city of Gary. If the question is, could they? Sure, yes, they could.
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Brown.
Mr. President, our rule has been in the past, if there is someone who needs to be at a meeting and they've been asked to come to the meeting and they don't show up, then we don't hear the legislation. The legislation is sent back to committee. So, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Reeves didn't show up. He was, and he was one of the primary persons involved in this, and he didn't show up and didn't bother to call and tell anyone that he wasn't going to show up. In the past, we have not heard the legislation, so it's not new.
Councilwoman Brown, I think this is a little different. This is a formal investigation committee that's
I'm
taking
sorry.
place. Councilwoman Brown, I think this is a little different. This is a formal investigation that's going forward at this time. And these individuals have not shown up. The council has the liberty to go further to demand that they do show up by issuing the subpoena order, which Attorney Williams outlined the procedure way that we would possibly do it if they do not comply with us issuing it verbally.
Right, and I agree, and I certainly hear Councilwoman Brown is that, look, there has to be mutual respect between the branches of government. And I always try to emphasize this to the public. It's not about attacking the mayor. It's about checks and balances. We have problems here. I mean, this is not an insignificant issue. We could have had 10 more vehicles on the street, all right? So when we overpay for stuff, and we're not, cash is not just, hiding in the basement here. We're strapped for cash. And so how we use these dollars is very important. And so I did want to give Sergeant Wolf an opportunity from the Fraternal Order of Police perspective to address their perspective on these vehicles.
Good evening, President Godwin. The stance that we take on this is, I mean, as far as the procedural aspect of things, that's for the council and City Hall to figure them things out. But as far as we go, the thought of losing out on potentially 10 other vehicles because we got away from how we do things typically with the people that have traditionally ordered cars and done a good job at ordering vehicles and things of that nature. And here we are sitting 10 cars or so less because of how the procedure happened is difficult for us because we have so many vehicles that are not dependable. They're not dependable. We have cars that aren't safe. Our Crown Vics are in and out of the shop every single day. And we could have eliminated a lot of those with the extra cars that could have been bought. And that's the frustration that we have with it because our officers need these vehicles. That's one item on our tool belt that you can't get around. We can't get around that. We have to have vehicles and they have to be safe for our officers. especially the way we have to use them. But thank you for letting me speak.
Well, thank you. Other council members have questions or comments? With Councilman Brown, Mike Brown. He's getting unmuted. All right.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to our chair. Look, I totally agree with you guys, but the thing here is there's been some waste, and it's affecting the safety of our police officers, our city, and so we have to figure out a way. I know they don't want to come to the meetings or whatever, but it seems to me that we cannot allow this to happen again. And I hear the attorney saying, well, we've learned. No, you really haven't. Because to me, it's like stealing $100,000 and saying I want community service. It's not that simple. There has to be some accountability for that action. And in my opinion, I would like our attorney to give us some kind of direction besides the subpoenas to put more pressure, because there's some other vehicles that haven't arrived yet. And I'd also like for the company that installed these radios after they were called and told, look, we don't want this. And then they still did it. I want some accountability with that vendor, because to me, that's disrespectful. You have an officer who's out there protecting people who tells you this is not going to do anything to help what we need to get done. Yet, you still turn around and give them something that they don't need. So I think there's some accountability also with the vendor. And I would say something civil, from a civil matter or something like that. Because if they were properly notified, and I believe Officer Covert, and they were told not to do this, that's criminal in my opinion, and it's a civil issue as well. And to me, as a vendor, it's disrespectful. Thank you, Mr. President and Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Brown. And I agree. And I think we will definitely have to regroup with our investigation committee, as well as Attorney Williams, to explore exactly both of those points that you raised. Other council members have questions or comments? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, I want to thank everyone for their time. Obviously, I am open to giving. We don't want to go to court if we don't have to, but to giving the individuals who were absent another opportunity. Processes weren't followed, so let's not try to defend something publicly that's indefensible. And so I appreciate my colleagues and our chair, Councilman Barnes Caldwell, for organizing this meeting. I appreciate Sergeant Wolf for his advocacy. It's clear to me, I'm open, support of my colleagues, obviously, and the chair, to have another meeting where we can directly hear from these folks. And if they are not present, then I certainly will ask, with the permission of this council, for our attorney to appear before a judge to subpoena their presence. That's not the ideal situation at all. But this is now the third, this would be the third opportunity. This is our second meeting on this issue. Before we opened the investigation committee, we had a meeting and these folks were not present. We have an investigation committee and they're still not present. I'm willing to give a third chance for them to come before us and to give us definitive answers.
Mr. President.
So that's how I feel about it. Councilman Brewer?
Mr. President, with that being said, I request that we send all these individuals certified mail requesting their presence to be here. And as we should see at the beginning of that meeting, as we should start, if they're not here, I will personally move that we move to subpoena whichever individual does not show up, that we do not go any further with the meeting. We subpoena at the beginning of the meeting and we end the meeting, and we'll continue once the subpoenas are issued at that time.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer.
If I could
agree, Mr. Pohl.
Mr. President, yeah, thank you very much. And again, I do want to thank you guys for for giving me the opportunity to come and discuss these issues with you. And from my perspective, there were a number of issues that we did answer. I guess there was a couple of things that, you know, I'd stated, you know, I prefaced with, I'm assuming this is why this happened. I'm assuming this is why this happened. Not all that many. And I guess the question is, because I value your guys' time as much as I value my own, are there specific questions that you felt that I did not answer for you that we can answer and essentially not continuously have, you know, public or these meetings where I completely understand the process for it, but I feel like I've answered a number of questions and I feel like there's only a few that are outlying. So I guess that's, you know, my suggestion might be, if there are specific questions that you felt have not been answered, what those specific questions are.
Well, if I may, Mr. Poe, and I certainly thank you, and you know how I feel about what you do for us and for the city. But I would say 5 questions. Number 1, you didn't order the vehicles. Number 2, you're not the controller, right? So you didn't approve the payment for the vehicles. Number 3, you're not a member of the Board of Public Works, so you didn't approve the invoices or orders that came before the Board of Works. Number 4, you're not the supervisor of the person who did order the vehicles. And so I think that in order for us to have, you know, a true answer to our questions, those parties are critical pieces to it. And so it's important for them to be present to answer those questions. I do think, as I stated, right, there are serious questions about our internal controls, how we do what we do, what do we consider to be an emergency, how the Board of Works functions, and how departments are engaging with purchasing and the administration to get what they ask for. So I don't think it's fair to ask you those questions and for us to, I suppose, have confidence in those answers, given that you don't fall in any one of those 4 roles. And so it's no disrespect to you, but it's simply, I think it's unfair for you to be sent here to speak on behalf of folks who were directly involved and most of which are able to be present. So that's simply what we mean by that. It is not my hope that the follow-up meeting will be long, but I think that anyone who views this recording, which it will be available, will see some of the many questions that are outstanding or that need further clarification.
And one other thing that I did want to reiterate, the position of the city is that this is not something that you guys can expect to happen again, as far as one single individual sua sponte writing, or I shouldn't use the term sua sponte, but on their own, determining that they were going to, order vehicles on behalf of the police department without the input of the police department or the policy that be followed.
Mr. Poe, he sold the Genesis Center on his own too, didn't he?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Sold the Genesis Center on his own too, didn't he?
Well, that did go through the redevelopment commission.
That's the second time. That's 2 times right there. Okay.
All right.
That's why it's important that I see him in person or on Zoom, not you. I like you, Attorney Poe.
I like you too. I like you too, Councilman.
This is not acceptable. So we've spent a lot of time. If there's no other question or comment from council members, I would suggest that we adjourn for now.
So move, Mr. President.
Thank you. We stand adjourned. Have a good evening.